So I'm curious, have you ever run across anybody in your life, maybe it was a friend of yours, maybe an acquaintance, have you ever crossed paths with anybody who was born disfigured? Their face was marked. On top of that, they were born with a disease called RSD, which stands for reflex sympathetic dystrophy. It's a neurological disease. Maybe they were abused and shamed as a child, and they developed what's called tremors. So their hands shook like they had Parkinson's disease. And, later on, they were in a home invasion and they were attacked by five men who beat them unconscious and then kicked them in the head while they were unconscious and left them for dead. Then later on, they had a severe back injury and told they would never be able to do physical labor again in their life. And then at some point, their father had a massive heart attack, was in the hospital. Their mother kept trying to get them to visit their father, and their claim was, well, he doesn't like me and he doesn't love me and I'm not going to visit them, or visit him. And on Mother's Day, they were guilted into going to the hospital. They walked into the hospital room, saw their father lying. He was due to get out in 2 days, and within 90 seconds their father died while they were standing there. And then, for all practical purposes, they thought that they were responsible for their own father's death. Then later on, they had a serious injury, tore both ACLs and couldn't walk. Then, on top of everything else, they had a near-death experience and were 90 seconds from dying and went through a whole very odd experience. Then at another point, they got in a relationship with a sociopathic woman who all the person knew how to do was gaslight them, which is make them feel stupid, ignorant, and on and on. Then, on top of all that, they had RSD attacks which left the person with no muscle mass in their left leg, and they had to learn to walk again and spent weeks and weeks and weeks in rehab in a hospital just to learn to walk again. Then, on top of that, they tore both rotator cuffs. Their right arm was unusable and their left arm was partially usable. And then, on top of that, they were diagnosed with cancer and at 50 years old and refused the surgery. And if all those things weren't just enough, then their only child, their son, who worked with them, as the person was away on a business trip, their only child jumped off a very large bridge and took his own life. And on top of all those things, then the person came down with a horrible case of shingles, vertigo, and tendonitis all simultaneously, which wound up with a bad case of neuropathy, and the pain was so intense they could hardly function. And along the way, they found out that in the home invasion, they actually had brain damage, and an EEG could never be performed on them. So they could never have an EEG done, because as soon as the therapist turned the EEG machine on, the machine went crazy. So they couldn't have an EEG done. And then, of course, they were diagnosed with complex PTSD. The complex just simply means instead of one trauma, there was a whole lifetime of traumas compounded on top of each other. And if all those things aren't enough, back some years ago, the person accidentally ran over a 5-year-old child and killed him instantly because a mother was taking her children across a busy highway, not at a crosswalk. And it actually goes on and on and on from there. There's a couple of dozen more issues on top of that. trying to learn to walk again, and all that. You use your arms when you've torn the rotator cuffs. And have you ever crossed paths with anybody like that? How in the world did that person survive? How did they overcome all of those obstacles? And there's many more. The list actually goes on and on. So have you ever crossed paths with anybody like that? Well, you just did. That's my life. My name is Gary King. I'm a speaker and an author, and I've been through it all. And so what did I learn about all this? What did I learn from those experiences of being through all those things? And how is it that I'm still here? I'm just short of 76 years old, and I'm still here. How do you survive all those things? Well, I learned a lot of things through all those experiences, which were horrifying. And of course, yes, I've been through a lot of therapy. I'm currently not in therapy unless I have a severe PTSD attack, and then it takes emergency therapy. And I've learned to navigate through my PTSD. So it's kind of like being a ship captain and learning to navigate through the Antarctic where there's icebergs, and you learn how to do that. So I've learned how to navigate through my life. But that's not all. I learned a lot of very valuable things about life. A lot of those things came as a result of my near-death experience. So here's what I can tell you about the near-death experience. If the average person and their consciousness, their awareness is measured on a scale of like 1 to 100, and the average person walks around, I'm going to generalize and say the average person walks around at number 5. But when you go through a near-death experience like I did, all of a sudden, in a couple of minutes' time, it shifts from number 5 to 95. So now your consciousness and your awareness is magnified many, many, many times over. So you notice all these things that were there all the time, you just didn't notice them. So when I was in rehab trying to learn to walk again, I noticed the rehab section of the hospital I was in was a common area. So there was many, many, many people going through therapy for all different kinds of things. They couldn't walk, they couldn't use their arms, there were all kinds of injuries. And I noticed as I looked into people's eyes, what was very evident was their emotions. So the emotion of sadness and the emotion of fear and the emotion of I'll never be able to do or be what I've done in the past. Well, with the list of things I read to you, and that's not all of them, there's another couple of dozen actually. I just kind of hit the main one. So how did I get here? What did I learn about my emotions when I was in rehab? Well, I learned that your emotions are everything. How you feel emotionally and the way you think has everything to do with everything. It has to do with how fast you heal and how you see your future and where you're going from there. It creates leverage. It creates willpower to move and move forward, or you become complacent, or you actually go backwards. So there were times in my life where I didn't have the courage to end my life, which I contemplated after going through all those things, and I didn't have the courage to live it either. So I had to find this thing called courage. I had to find this thing called inner strength. And where did I find all of this? How did I discover it? Well, behind me you'll see a bookcase. I actually read after my near-death experience, and I never read a book before my near-death experience. Even when I was in high school, I put my books in a locker and I left them there all year and took them out when I graduated. So behind me you'll see a bookcase with books in it. I read about 2,200 books, and all of those books were nonfiction, and they all had to do with creating inner strength and personal development, and 2,200 books, that's a lot of books. So I learned a lot of things. And I work with a lot of people all over the world, and you know, there's an old saying, and it kind of goes like this, you know, Goliath's greatest strength was also Goliath's greatest weakness, and David's greatest weakness was David's greatest strength. So my greatest strength is all the challenges I've been through. So it's made me stronger than before. And it's not just made me stronger than before, it's made me 100 times stronger than before. So there's a thing called the human constitution, and there's not a lot of people familiar with the term constitution when it's connected to the human body. So the human constitution just simply means that all the parts of the body, all the organs, and all the muscles, and all the tissues, they all work together, to create the human. And when you strengthen that constitution, what you're doing is you're making every aspect of your life grow. Well, that's typically not the norm. Growing usually happens as a result of crisis. People make choices because they have leverage on them, and some of the choices they make actually make their lives worse, and some of the choices they make, they keep it the same, and some of them they make giant leaps forward, like I did. In order for me to have passed through all of those things and be able to sit with a smile on my face, there's a reason for that. It's not accidental. So, the human constitution, there's things you can do to strengthen who you are as a person, to strengthen who you are as a human being. And those things, my situation, as the things I shared with you, a lot of it is emotional, and a lot of it is physical. I tore both ACLs, knee injuries, severe knee injuries, to the point where I couldn't walk. And then a few years later, I became a runner and ran 9 miles a day for 8 years. Well, that's not even logical that you can tear your knees up like that and then become a runner. And of course, I got diagnosed with cancer 4 days before my 50th birthday, and I refused the surgery. Now, I don't ever tell people to refuse surgeries. I'm just simply sharing my story. This is my story of what I did. Why did I do that? Well, the core of me, I created a core that I rarely ever get ill. I've traveled around 4 million air miles, just short of 4 million air miles, speaking around the world. And I've spoken in many different places: maximum security prisons, schools in third world countries, colleges, leadership groups. I've done that for almost 30 years. I wrote a book called The Happiness Formula, and of course, if you see what's on my hat, that's the actual formula. And the reason I chose to put the formula in the format of the periodic table is I wanted to see how many people would ask me what the formula means. What does that formula mean? Now, I've done this now for many, many years. I've worn, not this same hat, but I've worn a hat with a formula on it for many years. And it doesn't matter where I go. I can be in a grocery store, I can be in a college, I can be in a middle school, and I'm always asked, what is that formula? Explain the formula. And this has happened thousands and thousands of times. The formula is what makes the human constitution strong. It's actually how I could get to where I am now, and how I can help other people get to that place. And it gets far more interesting. So the formula in and of itself, the F, is forgiveness, the HT2 is honesty and truth, and the SW is self-worth. And the HF10 just simply means that whatever behavior you follow, that behavior compounds. It's just like money. So, penny doubled for 30 days is $5,319,768.12, I think, from memory. So that's 30 days of doubling one penny. Well, human behavior works the same way. So if you choose a certain behavior path, You need to understand whether it's making your constitution weaker or stronger. And in my case, the license plate on my car says "Don't lie" in big letters. So that's what I display. And of course, there's a whole thing behind the lie, and what it does to the human body. It dramatically shifts the human body because a lie creates weakness in the body. So I've learned an awful lot about how to move forward in my life and help other people move forward in their lives. And I go back to when I was in rehab and I looked at people's faces, I went, these people are, for the lack of another term, they're upside down emotionally. Their emotions are controlling their life, and their emotions have everything to do with taking a step forward. Everything. So I learned that where I am emotionally has everything to do with where I'm going, and I make decisions about the direction I want to go in. And of course, just like everybody else, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm happy all the time, because that's not true. I'm not happy all the time. But what I learned about happiness is it has not virtually hardly anything to do with the outside world. A little bit, but not a lot. It's internal decisions you make. And I started an experiment in November of 2019. The experiment was based on a lot of things. It was based on science. It was based on psychology. It was based on subliminal advertising. And why did I start it? This thing called leverage that I talk about, putting leverage on yourself. You can put leverage on yourself to basically do anything or go anywhere or create any outcome. So I created an experiment called the happiness experiment, because I realized after traveling all around the world for 30 years and traveling all those air miles, I discovered that everybody's path I crossed, their life was a happiness experiment. That's what they were doing. But they weren't conscious of it. They didn't have an awareness that their choices, even starting as a little child, their choices were based on this thing called happiness. If I choose this toy, it'll change the way I feel. If I choose this person, it'll change the way I feel. If I choose this career path, this trip, this house, this car, it'll change the way I feel. So it turns into life being a happiness experiment. So I tried something, and I tried it both within the confines of a city, which is St. Petersburg, Florida, and I tried it there, and I got feedback because I put the experiment on a Facebook page that had 67,000 followers, so I got a lot of feedback. So here's what I did. I had these signs made. They're made out of aluminum and fiberglass. They're real simple. It just has the word happiness. Okay? So I started putting these signs up, and I did it personally. That was the start of it. I was trying to see if handling the word happiness all the time would change the fact that I have CPTSD, and CPTSD is in the subconscious part of your brain, not the conscious part. Consequently, the subconscious part of your brain doesn't have the power of rationalization. It can't rationalize. That's why PTSD is dangerous for self-infliction. So I started using these signs to see if I could alter my PTSD, if I could put leverage on myself by using the word happiness and constantly seeing it. Now, to date, today is January 31st, 2021. I've put up 168 of those signs. I put one up this morning. So there's 168 of them all around the city of St. Petersburg. So I know where they all are, obviously, and I drive around and see them. Well, every time I see them, I see the word happiness, it changes the way I feel. Now, how long will it last? Well, it doesn't necessarily matter so much how long it will last. What matters is How does it make you feel in the moment? Now, without going into the current situation in the United States and the world, there's words you hear and there's words you see every day. The question is, how do those words make you feel? Do they make you feel happy, or do they make you feel some other way? And those other ways, how do those other ways affect the human body? How does it affect the human constitution? Because it does. It affects the strength and the immune system of a human, their emotions. You know, what's the number one cause of people graduating from this lifetime? What's the number one cause? Stress. That's the number one cause. That's stress. You know, most of my longtime friends have graduated from this lifetime. So I started that experiment. So now I want to go back a little bit to the first presentation I ever did. It was in the Gold Coast of Australia. First presentation. I addressed a room with 300 people who paid to be in a leadership seminar. And I was asked by the person who commissioned me to speak. They said, "What's the title of your presentation?" Well, I'd never done it before. So I went, "Oh, the title of my presentation is The Power of Truth." So the person said, "Well, you've got an hour and 15 minutes, I think was my time span." And they timed it from the back of the room. And my presentation was about being honest. So I told a lot of stories, and what I noticed in the audience is some people would make eye contact with me, some people wouldn't make eye contact with me. But the other thing that I noticed is nobody moved. The whole entire time, no one moved in the room. And I thought, this is very interesting. I've never done this before, but it's pretty fascinating. So I get a time card from the back that my time is ending, that I have 5 minutes left. And I go, well, I've got to do something and make this personal. So I have to make it personal. What am I going to do? So I'm looking at the clock on the back wall, and I don't remember. It said 5 after 8 or something. And I said, all right, here's what I'd like everybody in this room to do. I'd like you to take the 24-hour truth challenge. So for the next 24 hours straight, you need to be completely authentic and honest for the next 24 hours. And what you're going to learn is, you're going to learn how many times you deviate from the truth, like an auto response. You're saying something that's totally not true, and it's an auto response. The next thing you're going to learn is how many times you do that. The next thing you're going to learn is that your body actually physically feels different when you tell the truth. It's a fact. When you lie, your body is much weaker than when you tell the truth. And that can be proved over and over again by muscle testing. I mean, that's been going on for years and years and years. So I did this 24-hour truth challenge, because what did I know? I knew that if I said to everybody in the room, for the next year, you have to be honest, nobody's going to do that, or very few. So to this day, and that was 30 years ago, I get people email me from all over the world thanking me for a presentation I gave where they learned to be honest because they're healthy. So I'm almost 76 years old. I have no health challenges. I have no blood pressure challenges. I don't have any challenges. And I've torn up everything in my body, and I have no challenges. So I have PTSD, so I learned how to navigate, I learned how to make my way. And sometimes things happen that I can't navigate through. But, as a result of my happiness experiment, here's what's happened. I get messages that you wouldn't even believe. I get messages that'll make you cry. And I get them constantly. People go, you have no idea how that word on telephone poles at major intersections all over the city changes people. You don't know, do you? And people share very personal things with me about what's happened in their life based on just seeing the word happiness. And I took it to another step, and I wish I had one in my hand. I had stickers made that copy this sign, and they're made to go on the back of an envelope, a business size envelope. So all my mail goes out with happiness on the back, and how many people are handling the mail? Well, in some cases, that mail's probably handled 100 times. So, consider this. I tell a lot of stories, and stories change people's lives. And so I want you to think about a couple stories I'm going to tell you, because these stories will have profound effects on your life. So there's a young couple named Brian and Stephanie, and they share an apartment. And for the first time ever, Brian's mother is coming over for dinner. So Stephanie's working all day to create the perfect dinner. So Brian's mom shows up, they sit down to dinner. Within minutes, Brian's mother is squirming, and Brian knows exactly why. So he looks at his mother and he says, "Mom, I swear to you, Stephanie and I are just roommates, and that's all there is to it. There is no more." So the dinner goes on. Dinner's about done, and Brian's mom is squirming again, and once again he says, "Mom, I swear to you, it's the truth. We are just roommates, that's it." The dinner ends. Brian's mom heads home. Stephanie gets up in the morning. She's cleaning up from the dinner, and she notices her very expensive silver soup ladle is missing. And she's like really anxious about this because she can't figure out where it went. Brian gets up, and she knows what she has to do, and she's very uncomfortable. She says, "Brian, I don't know how to tell you this, but last night at the dinner, when your mom left, I had a very expensive silver soup ladle, and your mom left, and so did the silver soup ladle." Brian says, "No problem, I'll handle it." He immediately texts his mother, "Mom, I'm not accusing you of taking the silver soup ladle from last night, and I'm not accusing you of not taking the silver soup ladle, but the facts are you left, and so did the silver soup ladle." He instantly gets an email back, a text back. "Brian, I'm not accusing you of sleeping with Stephanie, and I'm not accusing you of not sleeping with Stephanie, but if Stephanie would have slept in her own bed last night, she would have found the silver soup ladle." So the moral to the story is there's no such thing as an inconsequential lie. No, there isn't. There can't be. There's a consequence to every lie. There's a consequence to every untruth. How does that affect the human body? It does. You can research it. Go online. This is not a Gary King theory. This is a fact. Lying affects the human body. It makes the body weaker. It makes it physically weaker. So, living in a complicated, I joke with people, I carry a flip phone. Okay. People laugh at me. I go on stage, I pull out a flip phone. It's a big joke. I carry a flip phone for a reason. It makes me stronger. How does it do that? Because I don't get caught up in what I share when I speak in schools about cell phones. I go, a mobile phone is a great servant, but it is a really bad master. Don't let those things control your life. I sit here and I smile after going through, some of my therapy. At one point, after my son decided he didn't want to be here anymore, I had actually had 4 therapists for a very long time. And when my therapists see the list of what I've been through, they go, "That's impossible. You can't still be here." Well, of course I'm still here. Why am I here? I'm here because I'm stronger than before. And what am I going to do with the fact that I'm stronger than before? I'm going to help as many people as I can before I graduate from this lifetime become stronger than before. That's why I'm still here. I knew it when I had my near-death experience. I knew it then. I knew I had something to do. Purpose in life is very important, having a purpose. And your purpose could be really simple. Your purpose could be picking up the trash you see on the ground. You know? Your purpose could be forgiving yourself and other people. You know, forgiveness is a gift. You don't give it to other people, you give it to you. You know, it's part of your self-worth. I mean, I grew up with a mole on my face, and it was huge. It was the size of a penny. And when I was a little kid, the size of a penny on your face is pretty big. And so people's nickname for me was, they called me Mole, which is how I was born disfigured with this thing on my face. And, you know, I had it removed when I was 37 years old. Here's the problem. The mole was gone, but the emotions were still there. It took me a long time to realize that even though the mole was not there, the emotions still were. And most of those emotions are what keeps you from being happy. You know, the longest happiness study ever done was done by Harvard. 85 years, it's still going on. It cost $20 million. What is the breakthrough discovery of this happiness study? The breakthrough discovery is that one of the core things that create happiness is deep human connection. Deep human connection, being connected deeply to other humans. In order to be deeply connected to other humans, honesty is imperative to create deep connection, being authentic, being real. So I want you to consider, and I want to leave you with a story. I'm not responsible for this story. This is a Richard Bach story from a book called Illusions. And here's how it goes. There's a whole civilization of creatures, and they live on the riverbed, and the current is wicked down there. And one day, one of the creatures looked at all of their friends and said, I can't do this anymore. This is horrible hanging on to this rock. I'm going to let go. And all of the person's friends said, no, 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 don't let go. You'll go down the riverbed, smash into all the other rocks, and die a horrible, painful death. So the person reconsidered. Creature reconsidered, hanging on. Another month goes by. That's it. I'm done. I'm letting go. And once again, all the friends said, don't do that. Do not let go. And the person let go. And sure enough, out of sight, smashing into all the other rocks. A few months later, they look up. You see, the top of the river, there's no current up there. It's a bright sunny day. And there's their friend, the creature friend, having the time of their life, happy and carefree. And they start talking. And they go, we never knew our friend was different. We didn't know our friend was special. We didn't know our friend was gifted. And their creature friend looked down and said, I'm not different. I'm not special. And I'm certainly not gifted. I just let go. That's what I did. I let go. And every day, I go through crisis every day. Is it easy? No. But I put up happiness signs almost every day too. And so what's happened as a result of that, I've been featured on the news many, many, many times over. I'm in breaking news stories. I have been for the last 12 months. And the news media gave me a title. They call me the happiness guy. So, you know what? I don't care what you've been through in your life, and I've shared a lot of what I've been through. You can be stronger than before. You can be much stronger than before. You can be much healthier than before. All you have to do is let go and think differently. You don't have to read 2,200 books, you know. In the background, you can see a book. It says, Change Your Life in 7 Days. No, I read that. Oh, I didn't actually read the book. There's a CD. I listened to the CD. So, stronger than before needs to be your future. It needs to be our future. So it's been an absolute pleasure to spend this short amount of time with you. A pleasure. And I hope to see you soon. I hope to meet you in person. You know? I hope to share. Oh, yes. Being a speaker, I speak extemporaneously, which means I don't use a teleprompter and I don't use notes, and I can stand on a stage for 8 hours and not shut up. And so I hope our paths cross. I suspect there will be numerous movies about the subject. So I care about you a lot, and I wish you the best, and just think about it. Stronger than before. I'll see you soon.